Chapter 3. A tragic situation. I had an appointment with my collaborators that afternoon, so I had to go to the Sing Sing restaurant on Fan Din Fung Street to meet them. Lou, who had once been the chairman of the Student Representative Council at the College of Science, one of my collaborators, asked me, "Do you know anything about our withdrawal when the VC takes Saigon?" "No, I don't know yet," I replied, embarrassed. "I'm preparing to leave the country in a few days. Will you go with me?" "I think it's too early to make such a big decision. Besides, I need to ask my boss first. Do you have any news for me?" I asked about work to avoid further questions from Lou. The Bung Song group is rising again at the university after a long period of absence. I already knew about that. What about Hone and Tang? The Bung Song group was a VC undercover organization established at the University of Science in 1965. Hone and Tang were its two leaders. When I succeeded in recapturing the Student Representative Council from this group, Bung Song disappeared. Hone and Tang had fled to the VC's base area. We had caught Zhao, the leader of Bung Song. "We haven't seen Hone and Tang yet," Lou replied. "I need to meet with my boss first. Let's meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. to discuss our future when I have more information." That was the last time I met with Lou, as he didn't show up on April 20th as planned. I guess he had already left the country. I arrived at the safe house on Fan Tan John Street. Although it was already 2 p.m., most of the staff were still there waiting for Boss Long. We all hoped to get some clarity about the situation in the country and the agency's plans. Dep, Boss's secretary, told me that Long was in a meeting at the presidential palace. I thought he might be meeting with President Nguyen Van Thieu, but I didn't know who to ask to confirm that after an F-5 plane piloted by Nguyen Thanh Trung, a lieutenant in the South Vietnamese Air Force, dropped bombs on the palace the previous week. President Thieu had been hiding inside the palace. My boss, Miss Long, was only 35 years old, quite young for such a position. He was slightly overweight, with curly hair, so people in the agency often called him Long Quan, Curly Long, to distinguish him from other Longs. He often played tennis at noon, so his skin was tanned. He walked quite quickly despite his short legs. I heard that he was distantly related to Mrs. Thieu, the First Lady, and that he also came from Ido, a province in the south, near her family's home. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I thought Long was very talented in his role. He worked very diligently. Many people said it was because he was single and had a good education, which was rare in an agency mostly run by military officers. Long had graduated from the law school and the National School of Public Administration. In our daily work, we often didn't have set working hours. Sometimes we worked until 2 or 3 a.m., ate a quick meal, and then worked again. Other times, we would sleep all day to regain our strength. During my time at the agency, I had never taken an annual leave because there was no time. The political situation in Saigon was too chaotic. Students at the University of Saigon and the Van Han University, a Buddhist university, staged protests almost every day to demand peace and oppose the government. Most of these protests were orchestrated by the VC or by parties opposing the government. The center of it was the Inquang Pagoda. I didn't know much about the opposition party's objectives, but I believed that in a country at war, any disturbance was helping the enemy. Long returned to safe house around 3 p.m., looking tired and slow, no longer his usual quick-moving self. We were all waiting for bad news. Throwing his briefcase on the table, he started in a low voice. "Today I attended a meeting. They didn't discuss the current situation in the country. They just told us that we have to manage things according to what we think is necessary. The Americans have abandoned us, so we must fight with our own strength. We will meet again tomorrow at the agency to do what needs to be done. with these vague words. We knew the country was in trouble. We were just pawns on the chessboard of great powers. They came here under the banner of peace. They left us with the same banner of peace. We had to fight alone against the communists, not just the Vietnamese communists, but communism worldwide. The cessation of American aid meant we had to carry the burden of the war ourselves. We were not afraid of sacrificing our lives, but we feared betrayal. I met Tuan and Bon, two of my close friends of the agency, in front of Safe House. Bon told me that Tuan and Zhang had already left. Bon had been the chairman of the Law Student Union in 1973. Tuan had worked with me when we first joined the agency. We often gathered intelligence from the Saigon Student Union and anti-government groups called the Third Force in 1969 to 1970 before working for the A-17 department. Our department was called A-17 because there were 17 colleges at the University of Saigon. Zhang had worked with me on operations. He had married a wealthy woman, and perhaps her family had found a way to escape after hearing harmful news about their assets. I thought Tuan had probably left with his family because they worked at Tan Son Nhat Airport. We sympathized with their departure. They had to take care of their lives and families first. We haven't decided anything yet. We think we should wait for the agency's plan because we don't have our own means. What about you? Bon smiled, seemingly trying to hide his worries. I think we'll definitely have a joint plan tomorrow. I tried to stay calm. I didn't know what to do in that moment. Boarding a ship at the Saigon port across from our headquarters or going to the airport to catch a flight to another country. I could do that for myself. But what about my wife and the child she was carrying? She was 8 months pregnant. What I was waiting for was a joint plan from the agency to evacuate in an orderly manner, which would be safer for my wife. We got married in 1972 after nearly 3 years of dating. We met in November 1969, the day I started at the agency, which was also her 20th birthday. My wife's sister and her brother-in-law also worked at the agency. When I met her in the recruitment office, I was surprised because she looked too young to work for an intelligence agency. She had just graduated from high school. After nearly 3 years of marriage, my wife was pregnant and very happy with the child in her womb. In fact, this was her second pregnancy. The first had ended in a miscarriage at the second month. My wife had suffered when a doctor told her she couldn't have children due to a serious illness. I had to take her to many doctors, including quack practitioners. One herbalist said she could give her medicine so that she could have only one child, and that was the child she was carrying. Our life at this time was very peaceful. She worked in the recruitment office at the central headquarters. I often drove her to work in the morning and picked her up in the afternoon. I rarely went into the agency because I worked in an external department. Our salaries were not enough to cover our expenses, so I taught chemistry at several private high schools in Saigon. That was our main source of income and also my cover. If our lives had gone on peacefully like that, I wouldn't have to write these memoirs. Unexpected events turned everything upside down and disrupted the lives of everyone in our country. Millions of Vietnamese people had to leave their homeland, exiled around the world. Hundreds of thousands of civil servants and soldiers of the Republic of Vietnam were imprisoned in what were called re-education camps by the communists from north to south, and some died there. Vietnam became one of the poorest countries in the world. Was this our fault? I don't want to blame anyone else. But what could we have done in that situation? We couldn't solve anything, not even our own personal circumstances. How could we fight against communism worldwide when we were tied up by the abandonment of a great power and our allies? I am not a leader of the Republic of Vietnam. I know nothing about the strategies of the Vietnamese government, but I think what we call strategy in small countries is just tactics of the great powers. We could fight against the Viet Cong during those days and would have died for our homeland. I don't deny that. But how could we have done that when they forced us to give up our strength? I've heard many criticisms blaming the government, especially the leaders of the Republic of Vietnam, for losing South Vietnam. I don't know if that's true, but I think we need to accept our collective fault and not blame just a few people, not even the leaders. I'm not defending them or ourselves. I just want to say that we need to understand the truth of what happened in our minds during those days. We were confused between our own safety and the country's well-being, between staying or leaving. I think those who left Vietnam at that time were not necessarily cowards, and those who stayed were not necessarily heroes. Each person had different circumstances and opportunities, and I'm trying to recall my own circumstances and opportunities to understand why I stayed. I want to pick up my wife at her office at number 3, Bac Dang Street, across from Saigon's dock. The scene at the dock was very normal. The Vietnamese Navy warships were still docked, one after the other. A few sailors and naval officers were walking on the sidewalk near the Navy headquarters. The Prime Minister's residence sat silently under the shade of a banyan tree. A few guards were standing stiffly in front of the building. Bac Dang Street from Nguyen Hue Boulevard to Thong Nhat Boulevard was a military area. Only people working there were allowed in. I tried to see if anything was unusual, but I couldn't find anything. I wondered why everything seemed so normal in such a chaotic time for the country. I asked my wife after she sat behind me on the motorcycle, "Have you heard about the plan from your agency?" "No." "What is it, honey?" "I heard someone say that our boss is going to leave the agency and Mr. Locke, the deputy, will take over. But that's just a rumor because I saw Mr. Ben at the office this morning. I don't know what's really going on, but I think there might be some bad circumstances leading to the loss of the country." My wife didn't care about politics. She was only concerned with our daily life. I still remember when the Democratic Party of President Thieu was launched. Their flag was the opposite of the North Vietnamese flag with a yellow background and a red star, hanging everywhere. I joked with my wife that it was the VC flag. She was frightened and asked me to take a different route to avoid it. I didn't know what she would have me do if my joke became a reality, when the red and yellow flag was everywhere in Saigon. I smiled at that thought to hide my own anxiety. We went to my in-laws' house to see if they knew anything. My sister-in-law, who worked in the research department, told me she had seen bad news in a report she typed daily for the president. The country's situation had worsened, especially in the central provinces, after the president ordered the withdrawal of military units from Buon Mi Thuot province via Provincial Road Number 7. Thousands of civilians died on what the media called the Highway of Horror. I had read this news in the press, but I didn't know what would happen next, especially regarding the country's plans according to the Paris Peace Accords. I was hoping for a clear explanation from the leaders and was waiting for it, working for an agency under the president's office. I thought there must be a plan for us if something happened. Lynn, my sister-in-law's husband, said, "I don't think the VC can get into Saigon." "How can you be so sure?" I interrupted him. Lynn worked in the training department of the agency. He answered awkwardly, "I heard that we gave up part of our land from the 12th to the 17th parallel to the Front for National Liberation, forming a strong defensive line from Tai Hoa province, ready for negotiations with the VC and North Vietnam according to the secret agreement in the Paris Accords. Do you think we have enough strength to fight the VC without American aid?" "I think we can." During the Tet Offensive, we didn't have advanced weapons like the M16 rifles, yet we still defeated the VC with the AKs. Now we have more new weapons. After the battle in South Laos, our military is weaker. I don't know if it could withstand another general offensive like the Tet Offensive. The battle on Route 9 in South Laos was a military sacrifice. The VC knew all our strategies. I think it might have been part of the American plan. They didn't want our military to become too strong for them to control. Everything we think is just speculation. We don't have clear explanations from our leaders. Now, I think we need to decide what to do in this critical situation. We should make our own plan rather than wait for the leaders. How can we do anything on our own? Lynn suddenly asked. That's why we're here. My wife and I can't do anything by ourselves. But I think if we all come together, we might come up with a good idea. We fell into silence, each of us with our own concerns. I thought no one could know what to do in such a situation, so I broke the heavy silence. Let's think about this and talk again later. On the way home, I passed by Ben Thanh Market, a commercial center of Saigon in South Vietnam. The streets were crowded with vehicles. Goods were overflowing on the sidewalks. Customers were packed in the stores. Some couples strolled arm in arm on Le Loi Street. Everything was just like any other day. I couldn't sense any atmosphere of war in such a setting. La Pagoda coffee shop on Lilai Street, where I often sat to drink coffee and listen to music, was still open, and familiar soft music floated out as I passed by. The bell of Notre Dame Cathedral rang, its clear tones soothing my soul. Though I was a Buddhist, I like hearing that bell because its pure tone gave me a sense of peace. The grand headquarters of the U.S. Embassy stood proudly across from the British Embassy, silent on Thong Nhat Avenue. A few U.S. Marines in their uniforms with M16 rifles stood guard at the U.S. Embassy gate, and on two lookout towers at the corners of the building, we returned to Tonda apartment complex, where we lived. My sister-in-law's family lived upstairs, and they had already arrived before us. We had just moved here a few weeks ago, so we only had a few belongings in the house. A rattan set in the living room, a mattress on the floor in the bedroom, and a few kitchen utensils. The dining room was still empty. I looked out the window. The Tonda River sparkled in the evening light. A few canoes cut through the waves in the distance. The coconut trees on the other side of the river stood still, reflecting their shadows on the water. The light purple sky blended with the deep green of the trees, creating a harmonious picture. I enjoyed such a life, but what would happen to me in this context of my country? Suddenly, anxiety took over my heart. The knocking on the door interrupted my thoughts. Lin came over to chat as usual, but I could see his melancholy. Lin and Lan, my sister-in-law, had 2 sons. I don't remember when they got married, but their older son was about 3, and the younger one was just a few months old. Lin had moved to the South in 1954 and was now working in the agency. They met there. He was about 1.7 meters tall with a long face and always smiling, easily making a good impression on others. According to Lin, today there was also Hao, a university friend of mine from the College of Science, working in the agency and currently assigned to police. Hao had just married recently. I thought he, too, was worried about his fate. I asked Hao if he knew anything, but he just shrugged and didn't answer. I started the conversation after we sat on the balcony. Do either of you know anything about the situation in Chien Loc? We're sending all our forces into that battlefield. I hope we can stop the VC there and wait for U.S. aid. How confirmed? I don't believe the U.S. will continue to provide aid anymore. President Gerald Ford failed to get Congress to approve the $722 million aid package. We'll have to rely on ourselves, Lin said sadly. Do you think President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing of France can help us find a solution for Vietnam? I asked hopelessly. That's France's effort to help Vietnam. I think it's a flicker of hope for us and also the wish of the third faction. Hao shrugged again. I think all of us were worried about the fate of our country and ourselves at that time. We worked in intelligence, yet we knew nothing about the country's plans. All the information we got was mostly from foreign newspapers. In these days, news from magazines like Times or Newsweek, or from radio stations like the Voice of America and BBC, seemed to be aimed at undermining our country. The new war cabinet of the president and the new civil prime minister failed to prevent this crisis. The people were confused by the rumors spreading everywhere, except for a few wealthy individuals who could afford to pay $8,000 for an exit permit. The rest of the people had no means to escape the country once the VC advanced, even those who worked for the U.S. and the government and military of South Vietnam. Everyone was waiting for the U.S. to determine their fate, as President Ford was requesting the U.S. Congress to approve funding to rescue 200,000 South Vietnamese citizens who had collaborated with the Americans during the war. It was a tragic thing to have to place one's entire life in the hands of others. The Paris negotiations were a victory for both the VC and the U.S. The fall of Phnom Penh marked the beginning. What would happen next to our country? AC 5A cargo plane crashed horrifically last week, killing many orphan children, casting doubts on whether the U.S. intended to abandon Vietnam. Once the orphan children, most of whom were Amerasian, had left, we did not know what would happen to us next. Could the U.S. rescue us more easily when the worst occurred? Or was that the only thing the Americans would do in Vietnam before washing their hands of it? With events like this, why should we not try to save ourselves? I asked Lynn, and how about the possibility of evacuation when necessary? We don't have the money to buy an exit permit, so we'll have to wait for the government's plan, Lynn said sadly. I hope our agency has already prepared a plan. I can't imagine an intelligence agency not having a plan for its personnel in a crisis. House said uncertainly. Moreover, our agency is located next to the dock. I think, in an emergency, we can board a ship to escape. What worries us is our families, I said, sadly thinking of my wife. We all knew that in an emergency, it was our families that we worried about the most, and what we were discussing was how to ensure their safety. I often heard the saying, when the country falls, the house falls, and the government's propaganda about the bloodbath when the VC advanced always haunted my mind. I was not afraid of dying if it could bring safety to my family, but I was terrified of the suffering my family would endure if the worst happened. A moment of silence filled the space after I spoke. I didn't know how to break the silence, so I shared what I had heard my superiors say earlier that day. Finally, I came to a very meaningless conclusion. Maybe we'll know a bit more tomorrow morning at the agency. Hal said his goodbyes. Lynn asked me to go with him to his sister's house to see if there were any updates. Lynn's brother-in-law was a director in the Department of Civil Affairs and Reconciliation. He wasn't home, so we arranged to meet the next day. We returned home, our minds very troubled. Lynn suggested I pack the essentials in case of an emergency. We only had a small handbag from our honeymoon, so we borrowed a military backpack from Lynn to make it easier to carry, and I had to help my wife because she was heavy with child. I packed a few clothes for us and some items for the baby soon to be born. I joked with my wife that if our child was born on the escape route, we should name it DTAN, evacuation, to remember this event. We laughed to ease our anxiety.